How about some key transfers that are going to decide division races potentially this year? Tiki Smith's the first one I want to touch on. He went from West Virginia to Georgia, and I did not get to talk about this one a whole lot when it happened because we had other news breaking that week. This is a huge, integral piece for Georgia's defense, and he's going to play nickel. So if you are maybe unfamiliar with the name Tiki Smith, or you didn't watch much West Virginia football, then you're probably, 90% of the audience, to be honest with you. But you may be asking yourself, what are you talking about? He's not even a true number one corner. He's just a nickel. Why in the world would a nickel potentially be a deciding factor in a division race or a conference race? Well, I'll tell you, number one, because he's going to a really good team. Number two, he's going to be a plug-and-play type. And number three, if you listen to folks close to West Virginia, or if you watched them last year, Neil Brown had him do everything, man. So he's very well prepared. He was like the Swiss Army knife in their secondary. Very smart player, very instinctive, physically gifted. But here's why it's so big for Georgia. You don't have to guess what you're getting from him, first off. Secondly, Georgia is ultra green. They are like Granny Smith apple green, but very talented in their secondary. So here's what they were going to have to do. They were going to have to be worried about not only compounding a lot of those kids from the neck up with how we want you to play corner at Georgia, you're going to have to cross-train some of them at that nickel spot. And not that you don't still cross-train them, but you're not going to have to count on one of them to potentially start for you. That would be more a product of injury at this point. Again, if Tiki Smith stays healthy, it's a non-factor. That's why it's huge. It's one of those tumblers that when it falls into place, hopefully everything else in your defensive back room falls into place. And maybe you're not a finished product in week one, but maybe when you see Georgia maximize whatever it is they're going to be this year, it's 15% better, 20% better than what you thought it could be, because that piece, ironically at nickel, ended up panning out and everything else just kind of fell into place. Jamison Williams, haven't been able to talk about this one yet either, the wide receiver, transferring from Ohio State to Alabama. I asked around with some folks who were close to Alabama last night, and they said, yep, the hype is real. And by hype, I mean plug and play. He's going to walk into Alabama and, probably be penciled in to be a starter for them. I want to caution, because I think a lot of people have looked at this move and they said, well, Alabama would not be bringing this kid in if they weren't kind of scared of what they have or don't have at wide receiver right now. I don't think that's the word to use at all. What I think they saw is a quality player out there and the opportunity to get him. They recruited him out of high school. So they want him. He's got speed, probably better speed than anybody they have in their stable right now. It's going to be very, very good. So he's got that. I'm not going to compare him to Waddle, but that factor, that kind of speed, that kind of juice, he's got that. Probably not the most physical guy in the world, but he's got the kind of speed element you want. But here's the other aspect. They have immense confidence in these young receivers they have coming in. You saw Hall in the spring game. You haven't even seen Christian Leary yet. You haven't seen JoJo Earl yet. They're all going to be studs, but they're all very young. And so what they're probably asking down there is, number one, why turn it away if we can have it? Number two, they're saying, what if we're not where we want to be in week one? What if, as we rub our magic 8-ball, it says, receiver room's not really going to hit stride until week 8? Well, this helps that a whole lot. And so I really don't think it's a cause for concern at all. I think Alabama's going to have one of the better receiver rooms in the country this year. It may be I know this is going to shock you, it may be a step or two off from having Jalen Waddle and Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy and Devontae Smith, but I still think it's going to be really good. Charlie Brewer is a name I talked about briefly, but I wanted to revisit this because this one's really underrated. This is a kid who went from Baylor to Utah, and maybe he's off your radar too. But this is going to have an impact on the Pac-12 South. You mark my words. Charlie Brewer, I don't know if you realize this, you Baylor fans do, he owns the all-time completions and touchdowns record at Baylor. He started there since like 2010. Feels like he's been there forever. I think he could literally, he's probably close to being at that retirement age and collecting a lot of benefits from the state of Texas. So he's been there for a long time. But then last year happens, and not only are they replacing an entire coaching staff, of course, you got the pandemic, so you don't get a lot of spring or any spring. And then the season was thrown for a loop because they got gutted, man. They had games thrown all over the place. They had postponements. Baylor got hit hard. And it never clicked for him last year. So Charlie Brewer says, I'm going to go to Utah. Kyle Whittingham's out there. It's a proven system. It's a contending team. It is a workable quarterback situation. They've got Cam Rising there, but I think Charlie Brewer probably walks in and is the starting quarterback. I think he went like 15 for 15 in the spring game. If there's one thing history has taught us, it is to completely base your expectations off the spring game. So Utah against the world, Utah by 90. But in reality, Charlie Brewer at Utah could very well be the linchpin and the deciding factor in the Pac-12 South race This could actually be a guy that decides which team shows up in that Pac-12 championship game. That's how pivotal, that's how important a role I think he'll play at Utah. And finally, Ty Chandler. We've talked a lot about Eric Gray transferring from Tennessee going to Oklahoma. Ty Chandler also transferring, but he's not going west. He's headed east. Head east, young man. And he's going to North Carolina. I had a good old-fashioned, well-placed source reach out the other day and tell me out of all these transfers that have happened so far, Ty Chandler to North Carolina may be one of the most underrated perfect fits of any kid that's moved anywhere this cycle so far. Ty Chandler is looked at as a perfect puzzle piece for Phil Longo's offense. Fits right in, is the absolute mold for what they want in a tailback there. If you'll watch, whether it be Clyde Edwards-Helaire in 2019 or Najee Harris in 2020, now these are stud running backs, obviously, but I'm asking you, think about the skill set. What can they do? They can pick up tough yards between the tackles if you need them to, but they're also excellent swing options in the receiving game out of the backfield. You don't give up one to get the other. Ty Chandler in the proper offense, and I would not ever mistake what he was playing in at Tennessee as the proper offense. Ty Chandler in the proper offense can be not only a difference maker, but he can be one of those guys that makes you turn on the TV Saturday about week 4 and say, wow, I didn't know Ty Chandler was that good. And wow, North Carolina looks like a real threat. Kind of go hand in hand there. So Jamison Williams, Tiki Smith, Charlie Brewer, Ty Chandler. Don't be caught off guard in week 2 asking where these guys came from. Jesse's showing you a lot of the names that we have an eye on here if you're watching on YouTube. I mean, Wandale Morris, we talked about him earlier tonight, DeMarcus Bowman down at Florida. But there are so many names. These aren't just these fringe number 83, 84, and 85 type guys on your roster that are going somewhere else to ride a bench. Tyreek Stevenson could be a first-round draft pick for all we know from Miami. So there are a lot of impact names. And inevitably, and that's the fun of this because we don't know where it's going to be, but inevitably, someone's division race, or maybe several someone's division races, are going to be decided by kids who were transfers. It's just the way college football is going to be. You don't have to like it. I'm not telling you what your opinion should be on this. I'm just telling you, if you want to, if it makes you sleep better at night, just don't pay attention to the transfer portal and just watch the teams for what they are in the fall. Now, having said that, don't abandon the show. We need you on the show. But if you just rather ignore the transfer portal, that's fine. If you want to hit mute, you can hit mute.